And welcome everyone to this week's edition of Sports Shorts TV. I'm Ronnie Rance here in the LeBaron Studios in downtown Baton Rouge. Joining me on the show today in place of Joel Davis, so you're in for a treat, is Mr. Ross Dellinger, of course, advocate, reporter, and covers LSU and does a fantastic job. Ross, how are you, buddy?
Good, Ronnie. How you doing?
You got a little week off. The Tigers going into an off week, so we know what the Tigers will be doing this week. They'll be trying to get healthy. They'll be, obviously watching a lot of film, won't be doing as much contact. How do you use the week off?
Well, I'm gonna go out of town for a couple of days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'll be heading back home to Biloxi, spend some time with my folks, and see my dad's a high school football coach. So go down there and watch his game Friday night.
What high school?
He was with St. Patrick in Biloxi, and so they're not great. But I'm gonna go watch some other kind of football on Friday, and then drive back Saturday, watch some games. Like I don't get to watch any games,
Right.
So I'll watch some games Saturday.
Actually, I'll be down in Biloxi in a couple of weeks. Doug Thompson's getting inducted into the Biloxi Sports Hall of Fame, and former LSU Tiger pitcher in the 90s. And, of course, I'll be down there actually going to kind of help MC that event. We were talking before the show. I mean, what a crazy, bizarre year it is for football, whether it be college or the pros for that matter. But we'll talk college first. LSU goes through, well, let's start off with their season. Hey, they beat BYU. They shut them out. We think that's a big deal. Who knew that BYU was going to be maybe the worst team in Division I football? Then UT Chattanooga, they go through the motions 45-10, but they're right where we expected. Okay, so 2-0, we're feeling good. We're seeing some signs with this offense. And then the three-game stretch that was as bad as any, between Mississippi State, Syracuse, and Troy happens. At that point, it felt like the season was lost and you were going to be just battling to maybe get to 6 wins and be bowl eligible. How did this team turn it around?
Well, it's kind of a cliche. You hear it a lot. You hear the wake-up call loss, and I always think it's kind of cheesy, and it's never really true that you need to lose to somebody. But for the first time ever in my career, I've never seen where I really do believe it. When they lost to Troy, they had all those meetings, those accountability meetings, and it's Ed Orgeron, it sounds like, took a step back away from the offense a little bit, and some leaders stepped up, especially defensively. Guys that maybe weren't watching enough film started watching film, and you saw leadership, and again Ed stepping back, and they needed it. They needed the Troy loss, and if they don't lose to Troy, I'm not sure they go on this 3-game winning streak. So it was as big of a wake-up call and a true wake-up call that I've ever seen in my career. And I think that's as far as specific in X's and O's, you're seeing an offense that a little different than what we saw the first few games of the year. They're doing a little some different stuff, and you see a defense, especially in the secondary, play a lot better. And I think it all boils down to that loss at home to Troy.
Jacob Hester said that this past week at Ole Miss that he really, he mentioned it before, but it's pretty obvious. It agrees with you that they hit the reset button to their season, and oftentimes coaches will be stubborn, and when they lose, they just try harder, or they work harder, or work longer, or whatever. You have to really take a look back and look at what you're doing and do something different, because whatever you're doing isn't working. They obviously did that. The biggest being that we know that Coach Orgeron took his hands off of some things, it's particularly on the offense. He had a little bit of a paw in there, and he said, okay, fine, you turn it loose. It's interesting that it took that loss for that to happen, because Coach Orgeron had said before the season he wasn't going to have a hand in the offense. But I guess old habits are hard to break. Yeah,
one of the big platforms he campaigned on to get the job was, I'm not gonna do the mistakes that I did at Ole Miss and kind of dabble in something maybe I don't know too much about, and that was the offense. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of hard. You're in that position. The pressure's on. You're paid so much money to do a job, and he kind of dabbled a little bit. It sounded like, and the thing about he admitted the week after the Troy game that he told Matt Canada to stop the shifting and motioning and pre-snap, and that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But if you talk to people around the sport and other offensive coordinators and analysts, that's Matt Canada's offense.
Yeah,
that's how he
what you
sets
bought.
up everything. Yeah, I mean, you stop pre-snap motioning and shifting, and the offense completely changes. There's no reason to run. So, and you saw it in the second half against Troy. All of a sudden, they started doing it again. And then you saw the next week against Florida. Not only were they doing it more than ever, and they were doing some other things. We saw some other wrinkles. We saw a lot more of the outside running and even some runs from Danny Etling that we had not seen. So you saw an offense that was a little different, and I think that Troy loss in the subsequent meetings had a lot to do with that.
How many years have you been working for the Advocate now?
4.
And where did you come from before then? Tell us your background.
Yeah,
when you got to Baton Rouge.
I covered Mizzou for about 2 years. I was on the beat there, and then before that, I worked in Jackson, Mississippi, and I covered Jackson State. And before that, did high schools for them for about 2 years each. So I was in Jackson for about 4 years, and my first job out of college was covering Auburn for a paper in Alabama. So I've kind of hit I've been around the SEC a little bit.
So you had Auburn, you had Missouri. When you were in Missouri, was that the good time, or had they gotten into the SEC yet? Or was it right about when they joined?
It was my first year there was their first year in the league.
Yeah, so they went to the East title game.
Well, the first year there, remember they went 5-7. The very first year. Then they turned it around the next year. The next 2 years, I think, they went to the SEC championship. Mm-hmm. So that second year, I was there for kind of this wild turnaround that nobody really expected. In fact, my last game covering them was when they beat South Carolina, I think, at home to basically lock it up. So it was funny to be there during the transition.
Right.
Everybody up there was so ecstatic. I mean, there were billboards, and there were, each store had a little sign, SEC, and it was funny to see that. And then you come from other SEC places, and they're just kind of like, okay, But they were so excited in Columbia to be part of the league.
You mentioned you covered Auburn, and you covered Missouri, and you covered LSU. I would imagine that, covering Missouri was a little bit of an outlier from a standpoint of the facilities, the fervor for the sports versus at Auburn and LSU. Was it obvious? Was it a big difference?
Yeah. In basketball is so big there, but during those years that I was up there, the basketball team was not great, and they were starting to go. I think Frank Haith left maybe the year after, so they were not in good. But still, even though the basketball team wasn't great, you kind of felt that's what was always talked about is basketball, and basketball this, basketball that. So that was a weird thing because anywhere other, I came from Auburn where they, in covering some Mississippi State and Ole Miss where basketball is way down the list, kind of in a way kind of like it is here. So that was one of the things that was a lot different there. And just like, the tailgating, seeing the build up to the games, football games, it just wasn't necessarily like it was. Even though they were division champions, it was different.
The football coach at Missouri who had to resign, what was his name?
Gary Pinkel.
Gary Pinkel. You covered for a couple years.
Yeah.
Took him to back-to-back SEC East, championships, appearances in Atlanta, and had to resign with the whole Black Lives Matter scandal and the protests and everything on the campus. I know you probably had some friends and ties that covered that whole situation. What a bizarre scenario to see a coach that's at the top of the mountain all of a sudden in a matter of just a few weeks having to resign. Yeah,
it was wild. I wasn't up there at that time, but a lot of my friends that I had covered the team with were up there, and just messaging kind of back and forth with them. They've covered some things on the Mizzou beat that just you don't see other places in the league. The protest and all that. I mean, it was just bizarre. And then Gary, it ended up coming out that he had it was a kind of skin cancer or something. So they ended up kind of releasing a statement and all that. And then there's some things that happened. I don't know if it's the region, if it's just the Midwest, and the Southeast doesn't experience certain things. And I will say up there, Mizzou being a big journalism school like it is, you have a lot of student reporters, and you just have a lot of reporters in general. You just have a lot of journalists in that town, and that a lot of times leads to stories that don't necessarily get uncovered other places, get kind of written about and uncovered there. I think that's one of the big reasons you see a lot of things kind of leak out. There's so many journalists
Everybody's
in the small
trying to find
town.
their Watergate, huh?
Right. Everybody's trying to beat everybody. Everybody's trying to trying to uncover some kind of. And you had the gay player that came out too.
Right, that's
Michael
true.
Salmon. That was when I was up there, and a few of us knew about it during that season. In the Missouri, and the student newspaper is the one that kind of had it, you know, and it was just, it's always crazy there. You know, there's a lot of student media, there's a lot of really good student
So
journalism.
when Michael Sam was there, and of course he was a heck of a player for Missouri as well, which makes it a bigger story. You know, if he's the 135th guy on the roster and he's a gay player, that's one thing. But if it's an all-conference player and that's another, and a guy who's going to get drafted.
Right.
So you knew about it prior to it becoming public knowledge, you know, in the paper or the way who broke the story? Was it the school paper?
You know, ESPN I think ended up getting it. They ended up getting it, I believe. I didn't know, but there was a lot of people on that beat that knew.
And they were just reluctant to write on it.
Yeah, it's one of those
how
things.
How do you release it?
Yeah, because like, you know, using anonymous sources for something like that is not a really great look, and that's kind of a big risk, you know, about a player's, you know, sexuality. Right. So. That was an issue, but I know that the student newspaper, they had it, and they actually had it on the record from him either before the season or right around that season was about to start. And for whatever reason, they decided to hold it, or maybe Michael Sam called him back and said, no, you can't run it. And it was kind of lingering throughout that year, and finally late that year, I believe, is when Michael was on ESPN, I believe, and when kind of came out, went open with it with ESPN.
Well, you know, he laid the groundwork for the next player because it won't be as big a deal you know, next time around. It'll be ho-hum. He's Ross Dellinger, does a great job covering LSU for The Advocate. We'll talk to him about the Tigers, about his time down here in Baton Rouge for the last 4 years. He's covered LSU baseball, football, you name it. We'll dig in a little more with Ross. We'll also talk a little NFL as well. Don't go anywhere. Sports Shorts will continue from the LeBaire Studios right after this.
When my wife and I started Relief Windows, what we were trying to do, what our goal was to give a quality job to a homeowner. Everybody's scared of contractors. We wanted to change the mold of what that is. Not showing up on time, not answering the phone, somebody running with your money. The reason why you should pick Relief Windows to do your renovation of your home, windows, doors, hardy plank, or siding, is because of the experience, quality service of our company. Service is everything we have. It's the foundation of our company. We're going to show up on time. We're going to do the job right. Over 60% of our customers is customer referral. We're a local company here in Baton Rouge, built in Baton Rouge, staying in Baton Rouge. Okay. The job's not done until you're happy and we're happy. It's built the old-fashioned way, with a handshake. Here at Relief Windows, it's an honor to be official window, door, and siding company of LSU Athletics, from one winning team to another.
Appliance Distributors of Louisiana are appliance experts who have been in business for over 35 years. ADL provides worry-free, full-service solutions for the whole home. ADL works with designers, builders, or individual homeowners like me when I was remodeling my home after the Great Flood in August 2016. ADL offers special homeowner discounts, just like the ones the builders get. Go to ADLappliances.com and see all the major name brands, or stop by their store on Nicholson Drive in Baton Rouge. ADL services the entire state of Louisiana, so call, log on, or stop by today. Appliance Distributors of Louisiana. If you're an avid sports fan, then you need to check out the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, located in historic downtown Natchitoches, next to the Chateau St. Denis Hotel and the Natchitoches Convention Center. The Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is where the rich history of Louisiana sports is told through the pictures, artifacts, and by the legends themselves in video archives. Come to the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame and Northwest Louisiana History Museum and visit a world-renowned architectural marvel. For more information and to purchase tickets to the annual Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame events, visit lasportshall.com/purchase.
Welcome back, everybody. Ronnie Rance, Ross Dellinger, the beat writer for The Advocate in Baton Rouge newspaper. Of course, you can check him out on Twitter, Ross Dellinger, at Ross Dellinger. This guy is prolific on Twitter. I mean, you know, all these other old 40, 50, 60-year-old sports writers are just having to learn about Twitter, and they're like, well, how many of these I got to do a day? This guy's doing 100 of them a day. And it's funny, a lot of the LSU coaches are like, dude, that Ross guy, I mean, it's like he's in the room. How does he get some of that information? But all those secrets, he's not going to tell. You've covered LSU for the last 4 years. Baseball, football, which do you prefer?
Football. I'm a football guy. You know, my dad being a football coach
Sure.
and all that. But I had my first 2 years here covered both baseball and football. My third year kind of in and out with baseball a little bit, and now, of course, this past year just football. As we hired strictly a baseball reporter.
Who's that?
Luke Johnson, of course. But I had a lot of fun those first 2 years covering baseball. The fun part about covering baseball is the road trips, because you know, football, I don't think people understand, you can't stay in the towns because the hotels are outrageous during football, and you're only in there for 1 day and you're out. Baseball, you're in there for 3 or 4 days. You can stay in the college towns and you can experience them. And I miss the road trips a little bit. My wife does not.
Sure. You covered Paul Mainieri, guys, you know, Hall of Fame coach already, and one Hall of Fame, going to be in many, including Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame one day. What was it like covering him, and what do you, if you had to put your finger on what makes him so successful, what would you say?
Well, he is almost without a doubt the most easy to work with coach I've ever covered. And I mean, going back to high school even. I mean, he's as welcoming as a coach that I've had experience to cover. You know, what makes him good? I think Paul is really good about kind of being, well, the voice, first of all, the voice and the face, you know, of a program. You know, as far as with media and with fans too, with events. I mean, I know I've heard stories about, you know, Paul driving 2 hours or an hour and a half to New Orleans to do some kind of event, you know, driving an hour and a half back just by himself, barely making it to practice, just to be at this lunch. And you hear stories, kind of all that. So he's great about being kind of the figurehead image of the program. You know, what makes him good as far as what helps them win is, I think that he's a good organizer. He seems to always be. I mean, I'll go sit with him, and he'll keep looking at that clock as we're talking. He's looking at the clock and looking at his watch, because he's always on time, really punctual, and just always organized. And you know, I think especially when it comes to pitching, he delegates. You know, he knows. You know, Alan Dunn knows more about pitching than he does, and he delegates it. And then I think number 3 is, you know, Paul, I know, works hands-on with the infielders, being a former infielder. And I really think, you know, as far as X's and O's and stuff, that seems to be what he's really good at, you know, is infield coaching and things like that.
You covered Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman going to be playing in the World Series. And Will Harris, of course. Will Harris played at LSU under Smoke Laval. And kind of interesting and a fast track. Alex Bregman was just talking with you a couple years ago as you covered him for the LSU Tigers, and here he is making plays to win the game. Yeah,
it's incredible. I saw that one play at the plate that he made. It's just like you just get flashbacks of him making that against Arkansas or something. You know, saw that for 2. Yeah, those are my 2 years on the baseball beat, 14 and 15, were his sophomore and junior years. And I can remember that sophomore season. They had a little bumpy start to the year. I don't know if you remember. They lost like 8 of 10 at one point, and he was in a slide. He was like 2 of 30, you know, and he was shaving his head and doing all this stuff. and then he just broke out of it, went on this crazy hitting streak. And however he went is how the team went, you know. And he went on that crazy hitting streak, and they went on a streak themselves. I think they won 10, 12 their last games, and then they ended up losing the regional, of course, at home here to Houston. But and then his junior season was remarkable to cover. He didn't hit many bumps during that one. You could tell he was ready to go. I'm sure I will never see a better defensive shortstop with my own eyes. I don't think I ever will.
Yeah, and LSU's been blessed to have a lot of good ones over the years. Of course, you know, Aaron Nola was outstanding. Austin Nola's older brother was an outstanding defensive. And go back, you know, Aaron Hill played here in the early 2000s, and you had DJ LeMahieu played short for a little while, and you go back to the 90s, you had so many great ones with Terry O and Jason Williams and Andy Sheets. Those guys played in the big leagues. It's kind of a tough deal because all the games nowadays are on TV.
Yeah.
TV or internet or some cable. There's literally not a game that isn't. So you see every play. People didn't get a chance to see Jason Williams play every play in the mid-90s, or Andy Sheets, or Rush Johnson, or whatever, play every play. Even Aaron Hill, they didn't get a chance to see every game, every play. So I think nowadays we have a tendency to say, oh, these guys are so much better. We just didn't get a chance to watch every single game. Plus the old box, if you ever step foot on the infield of the old box, much easier to field a ground ball at the new box than the old box. It was bumpy, to say the least. All right, so we've been covering LSU football. Covering Les Miles, covering Coach Orgeron, biggest difference?
Well, you know, the first probably 2 years that I covered Les, I don't think he knew who I was. You know, I don't think he knew who many people were in that room. You know, he just, that is probably the big thing, is that Les never really read anything. You know, he didn't really know many members of the media. He didn't care to know any members of the media. And you could tell he didn't really watch anything media-wise. He didn't read anything. He told me one time that the only time he ever, because he got an Advocate print edition every morning, but the only time he never read it, he said, and Kathy, what would happen is if there's anything negative written, he said Kathy would read it and then tell him, translate it some way. So Ed is different. Ed knows everybody. He certainly knows me. We have a relationship that goes back a little bit from when he was an assistant coach here. And he reads a lot. You know, he reads the paper and he reads online. He knows what's written and said. You know, he can say whatever he wants about that, but he does. He knows. Just like any, I think, good recruiter, you want to know what the message is out there, and you want to try to, in a way, change the message.
Now, is that Ed, or is that Derek Panamsky, you know, kind of helping, you know, to lead? Or you think that's just in Ed's DNA to just want to read and want to know?
Yeah, I think that goes back even before Panamsky. I think wherever Ed's been, he's been a guy that is well aware of what's said and written about his program. Now, I think certain people around him keep him updated on stuff, but he reads a lot, you know, and that again, that comes with anybody who's really in love with recruiting. You know, your message is everything. You know, the message that's out there. So I know just in private conversations with Ed sometimes and with others that when he reads and sees things, he looks at it and says,
"What will a recruit?
How will this how will this affect me in recruiting? What will a recruit think about this or that?" So if he thinks it's something bad, I usually hear about it.
Well, the good news is that the recruits aren't reading a ton. You know, I mean, they're so inundated with their own lives and their own, you know, contacts that they're not out there scouring tons of papers. But is Ed been as open and as accessible as you thought he would be?
For the most part. You know, obviously we had what happened with fall camp. He completely closed camp for those 3 weeks. That was unexpected after he opened up, you know, in-season practices when he took over in the interim. But now he's opened up in-season practices with us. We get to see anywhere from 8 to 20 minutes of drills, mostly individual stuff. But that's more than we got, you know, with Les Miles, and honestly, that's more than a lot of SEC beat writers get during the season. I mean, the fact that we get to watch some practice on a Wednesday, that's late in the week for a team. A lot of people in the SEC, a lot of reporters don't get that. So, you know, and as far as, you know, sometimes after he gets off the podium from addressing us on Monday or Thursday, I can go up to him. He's pretty open about it. You know, he's pretty open. He is. But there's been some stuff like closing fall camp, and there's been some stuff with injuries where he's not as open as maybe he was in the interim. He's starting to realize, as Les Miles did. Les Miles used to tell me, well, and I always say, Les, why don't you just tell us the truth about injuries? Just be open. The other team knows, and He said, well, first of all, no, the other team doesn't necessarily know. And two, I have used other reporters who cover other teams in their injury reports to attack the other teams before. He was telling me about maybe 02 or 06, 07. Played somebody that maybe played Virginia Tech and knew a defensive end was hurt only because it was reported in the local media, and he attacked this defensive end. They ran for so many yards on that side. So he learned from that not to say anything.
Well, it's interesting, and I've said, that when Coach Orgeron was auditioning for the job, he was quite different, much more gregarious, laid back, fun to be around, wide open book, And then once he got the gig, it's like, okay, close the windows, let's go back to being an old school football coach, because, it's like, well, wait a minute, this is a little less Miles with an accent. It's the same kind of access we had before, maybe even less in some ways. So kind of interesting, the little bait and switch there. Let's take a break. We got to behind on the break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Alabama. It always starts off, I don't know if LSU has a chance. And then by the time game time comes, the point spread goes down. A lot of people think LSU has a chance. We'll talk a little bit about LSU, Alabama, and I want to get your opinion on where you thought LSU would be before the season at this point. So we'll talk about that as well. Don't go anywhere. Ross Dellinger will continue the conversation with him right after this.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the Grand Slam hitter to grandparents. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Relief Window Experience. Relief Window.
When my wife and I started Relief Windows, what we were trying to do, what our goal was to give a quality job to a homeowner. Everybody's scared of contractors. We wanted to change the mold of what that is. Not showing up on time, not answering the phone, somebody running with your money. The reason why you should pick Relief Windows to do your renovation of your home, windows, doors, HardiePlank siding, is because of the experience, quality service of our company. Service is everything we have. It's the foundation of our company. We're going to show up on time. We're going to do the job right. Over 60% of our customers is customer referral. We're a local company here in Baton Rouge, built in Baton Rouge, staying in Baton Rouge. The job's not done until you're happy and we're happy. It's built the old-fashioned way, with a handshake. Here at Relief Windows, it's an honor to be official window, door, and siding company of LSU Athletics, from one winning team to another.
Relief Windows.
BR Mattress Company is the only name you need to know when looking to buy a mattress anywhere in Louisiana. BR Mattress Company is located in the Live Oak Shopping Center on Florida Boulevard between North Foster and Acadian. BR Mattress Company offers all the top name brands at 50 to 75% off retail prices. That's a $5,000 mattress for only $1,500. BR Mattress Company is open 7 days a week, and owner Mitch Kimball and his staff will provide you with laser-like service and a PhD in mattress education. If you want the best night's sleep of your life, go see the experts, Baton Rouge Mattress Company.
At Peak Performance Physical Therapy, we treat the athlete in everyone, from the three-point shooter to the three-piece suit. If your doctor prescribes physical therapy, ask for Peak Performance by name, getting you back in the game of life.
Welcome back, everybody. Ross Dellinger, the guest today on Sports Shorts TV, does a great job covering LSU for the Advocate newspaper, and you can check him out online and, of course, on Twitter at Ross Dellinger. Give him a follow. A lot of great stuff. I mean, he usually gets some info before anybody else. LSU football, it's amazing. I talked to Christian Lockhart after the game on CST, and I said, it's incredible what a difference 3-4 weeks makes. And he started laughing because, I mean, it really is. I mean, this has been the most, I've never seen a turnaround from an LSU perspective like what they've had. And now they've got 2 weeks before the Alabama game to give themselves at least a chance to play the game and give themselves a shot. Although on the road at Alabama, but hey, can they play like A&M and at least make it reasonable? I mean, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, this turnaround it's more impressive than the 2014 turnaround, but it kind of reminds me of a little bit. Remember they got just bashed by Mississippi State and Auburn. I mean, just both of those games were blowouts basically, and then they went to Florida and won on Colby Delahouse's field goal, a game they probably shouldn't have won, and. Then they came home and beat Kentucky, and then hosted maybe number 1 or number 2 Ole Miss and won 10-7.
Right.
And then they head into that Alabama game on a 3-game, same thing on 3 or 4 game winning streak, and played them close at home and lost in overtime at home. Mm-hmm. So it kind of reminds me of that. But now, this stretch I think they did this year was even a little stronger. This team's competition was stronger, and then of course. This year, you have to go to Alabama, which...
You came into the season thinking LSU would do what to this point and then what overall?
Yeah, they're actually right where I would have thought they would be, about 6-2. Not necessarily 3-1 in the SEC. I probably would have thought they were 2-2, that 2 of those losses would have come against SEC competition, maybe Auburn and Florida, So they were kind of
Troy, Mississippi State.
Right, right. I know.
Nobody had that combination on their
it's wild.
Trifecta.
The record is about what I thought. How they got the record is the thing that's just kind of baffling. So, but I came in thinking that 8-4 is about right. I just couldn't get around the line issues, the depth on the line, specifically the offensive line. But you look at the defensive line too. There's probably no rotation there, and during camp. You kind of saw, oh boy, there's going to be trouble on the lines. You just kind of saw that with this team, and so I thought 8-4, and now we were just talking. I mean, they got a legitimate chance because of the way the league is of going 9-3.
Yeah, Tennessee. I mean, it's not a matter of if, but when they're going to make a coaching change there. Does he finish the season or not? But you could be potentially taking on a Tennessee coach with an interim, a Tennessee team with an interim coach there. So that game going into the season was one you thought, ooh, that's going to be tough. Now LSU's going to be favored. Arkansas looks not good, especially with their quarterback issue. If their starter's not hurt, starter's out, and then A&M, LSU just kind of has A&M's number. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. LSU just kind of seems to get the best of them, and they got them at home. So, yeah, I think at this point, if LSU loses a game outside of Alabama, it's going to be an upset.
Yeah, right. No, and probably a big upset. You think about how maybe the spreads, what they'll be. I mean, Arkansas, you get them at home, and they have just played awful. You would think that's a 2 touchdown. I mean, LSU probably be favored by 2 touchdowns in that game. And then on the road at Tennessee, you mentioned the woes there. I mean, it's probably a 8 to 10 point spread, I guess. The A&M is the one. I think it's hard to predict, I guess, what that line will be because A&M's got a few games to play. I'm sure that line's going to potentially move based on how they look. But right now, you would think that's close to a touchdown or 5-6 point spread for LSU. So if they 3 very winnable games after Alabama not so much, but 3 winnable games down the stretch.
When we look ahead, and it's just so far into the future, but let's just give the LSU the benefit of the doubt and say they do go 9-3. They lose to Alabama, and they take care of business with the rest of them. You look at bowl possibilities. Just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the Walk-Ons Independence Bowl. Okay, we can move past that now. But if we're 9-3, where could that end up? Well, one possibility, and a real one, it could be going right back to Orlando where they were last year. But it's an interesting possibility you brought up. Talk about what could happen with Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, if Georgia goes through the season undefeated and their only loss is to Alabama in the championship game, and it's somewhat a close championship game, and you've got a lot, and they're sitting there at 12-1, and you've got some teams like Ohio State and Notre Dame who maybe are at a 2-loss team. Maybe Georgia squeaks into the playoff with Alabama. The big question is, would the committee seed them 4 and Alabama 1? You'd have a rematch of the SEC championship.
Just had.
Yeah, you wouldn't think they would do that. You'd think if they do get in, maybe they seed them number 3 or something. But you could have a real possibility of Alabama and Georgia in the CFP. I mean, I think it's more of an outside shot. But if it does happen, a 9-3 LSU. If
there was ever a year, this would be it.
Right. Yeah. And if there's you got a 9-3 LSU. And they would be the 3rd best team, after Georgia and Alabama. They would be the 3rd best team in the SEC. They'd go to Orange Bowl potentially.
If Ohio State wins out and they go 12-1, okay, meaning they win their Big Ten championship, and they go 12-1, their 1 loss is to Oklahoma, which now has 2 losses, I think, already, right? So.
They still got 1.
They only have the one, the Iowa State one.
State,
okay,
yeah.
But they've played. They haven't looked
right
real good. If the 1 loss is to Oklahoma, but it's on their home field, and Georgia continues to be dominant and take care of business and go undefeated, and they only lose to Alabama single digits, kind of like A&M, 7, 8, 9 points. They've got a real strong case. I mean, they've got a real strong case that at 12-1, playing Alabama close and losing, they're still better than a 12-1 Oklahoma or 12-1 Ohio State team that lost to lesser competition.
Yeah, and they're gonna have a really good resume on that, because remember, Georgia went up to Notre Dame and won.
Well, true.
And Notre
That's
Dame
right.
is going to have
with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and Notre Dame, probably. I mean, if they're sitting there with 1 loss, and the committee's got to take into head-to-head consideration. So there's a real possibility. Georgia squeaks in there, and that would be crazy, because then you'd have the Orange Bowl has to make a decision. Do they want a 9-3, LSU down there? You would think that LSU would travel down there pretty well.
Let me tell you something. If there's anybody watching that's a part of the Orange Bowl committee, please take LSU. Oh, that would be so fantastic to spend the 1st of January in South Beach, huh? I mean, play a little golf, go check out some great restaurants. Oh, man, that would be fantastic. Please take the LSU Tigers. By the way, LSU playing the University of Miami next year in Dallas, the first game of that year. As we look ahead to the future, and you being from Biloxi, Brennan, the quarterback of the future for LSU, we're played over there in Bay St. Louis. What is your thoughts on that young man and what that future could look like for him?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think we've seen it this year. Did your dad coach against him at all? Did they play against him? No. He's seen him play a lot, being down there. But he actually coached at St. Stanislaus for a while. But he left a few years ago. But he kind of knows the Brennan family pretty well. And I mean, we saw the talent, when he's in those games. You see the arm talent, and you see the kind of the pocket mobility he's got in upstairs. The head. I mean, he comes from a really good family, smart kid. Seems like a good decision maker. He's got all the talent in the makeup to be kind of the next big thing. And
doesn't he remind you of Eli Manning a little bit as far as the makeup and the skinny kid, not superimposing, but smart, good arm. Probably has a better arm than Eli Manning, quite honestly. Yeah. But it reminds me of that makeup type.
Yeah, some older guys around here have told me that he reminds them of Tommy Hodson. And I didn't really watch Tommy a whole lot, but that is a name I kind of hear banted about is that he's the next Tommy Hodson. But he's got a lot of talent, and like I say, he's a smart kid and stays out of trouble, all that stuff, goes to class, goes to the meetings, learns the offense. The potential is there for him to be really, really good. But there's a potential there for Brandon Harris to be really good too. I mean, he had all this talent. I think what separates those two guys is that it's kind of upstairs, the mental makeup of a kid. He's got a little different personality than Brandon, and a personality that you see wanting to take the steps and attending all the meetings and diving into the playbook and all that stuff.
But what's interesting, and you covered Brandon Harris from when he got here. I would have been wrong on that, because it goes to show you that there's so much made about stars, 5-star, 4-star recruits. We get fans as well as I think coaches at times fall in love with the recruits and the star rankings and all that, whereas a lot of times it's about a fit.
Yeah.
And Brandon Harris was not a fit, as far as the system he ran in college, in high school up in Shreveport, and what he was doing, and then to transition that to the Cam Cameron offense was never a fit. And it just didn't work for him. But when he came in, he's such a charismatic, outspoken, guy, easy with the media, loves the media, sometimes too much. But at the same time, he came across as mature and a little wiser than his age. But obviously that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But it was just I would have thought he would have figured it out over time, and he just didn't.
Yeah, you almost think you look back on it and how good he was in front of the camera, and it's almost that it was some kind of facade a little bit, it was just kind of, it wasn't, we weren't seeing the real thing, I feel like sometimes. And then, you mentioned the fit. Look what Zach Mettenberger, a pro-style kind of guy, staying in the pocket, big arm guy, did in Cam Cameron's offense, and look what happened with Brandon. So I think that's a great point, is that the fit just wasn't there with Brandon. He was a guy who wanted to run around a little bit and chunk it deep, and that was not what Les and Cam were all about. And honestly, I thought him going to North Carolina that he would.
You thought that would be better? Yeah,
I thought it would be better.
Disaster, but you would have thought it would have given him a shot.
I think I looked at the stats: 8 interceptions, 1 touchdown. Completion percentage, I believe, below 50. Man, some things. You just, a lot of people want to blame the coaches, and it was Cam Cameron, it was Les Miles. Some things, you got to point to the player, and that at a certain point, they just didn't get it,
Well, the problem nowadays, and it's not just a football thing, it's just a millennial thing, and it doesn't matter the sport. But football, of course, is the big dog, so it gets the most attention, is that you can't just throw a net around 2-3 quarterbacks anymore and bring them in and let them fight it out and see which one becomes the star, because I'm not coming to your school if you've already got a high-tier quarterback. And so nobody wants to compete for jobs anymore, and you're either going to give it to me and I'm the only star quarterback in your class, or I'm not coming there. And so therefore, you roll the dice and it doesn't work out. And if you look at LSU over the last 10 years since Matt Flynn, my goodness, it's been one collapse after the other, starting with Ryan Perrilloux and all the different dominoes, how they've fallen. The player that went in the draft to the Dodgers, the pitcher, and all the different things that have happened for a kid who was on his way to the airport and turned around and went home up at Notre Dame, Notre Dame, and then went to Cincinnati. But what happens is you put all your eggs in that one basket. And if you drop the basket, you got no other eggs. So it's been a decade of just trying to find the guy for LSU ever since their 07 national championship season.
Yeah, and a great example of that is Felipe Franks a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
committed for
spent a year
18
with
months.
Yeah.
All the eggs in that one basket. And he even told the staff, I want to be your only quarterback. I'm not going there if you sign another quarterback. I'm your only guy. And then he left. So, and
fortunately, the Brennan thing happened for
him. Yeah. But it's so you look at LSU's quarterbacks right now. It's kind of amazing in a way that they were able to get a two top 10 guys in Brennan and Lowell to sign. Now, can they keep them here together is going to be the hard part. But right now, I think with the struggle they're having in recruiting right now for the 2018 class is no other quarterback wants to come here and sit behind those two guys. So the quarterback recruiting is a struggle. I remember talking to Les Miles about quarterback recruiting, and it's the hardest position. It's the hardest deal.
Well, all you got to do is look at Steve Spurrier. He never got one at South Carolina, and everybody thought, that when South Carolina got him, I'm sure they thought, man, Steve's going to bring in some good QBs. Who's not going to want to play quarterback for Steve Spurrier? You're going to sling it around. You're going to set records. And he couldn't get a guy, and he had it's amazing he won as much as he did over there because he never had a good quarterback. I think Garcia was the best one he had. He benched him about 20 times in his 4 years. So it's been tough, and if they can convince Narcisse to stay, you could actually have some packages in there that would really make a difference. But And nowadays, when guys get hurt, you just look around the league or you look around the country. It's rare that a guy starts and plays every game. You know, there's a lot of injuries and things that happen. We're running behind on a break. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, kind of wrap things up. Ross Dellinger joined us talking some LSU football. He does a great job covering them from the Advocate. Give him a follow on Twitter at Ross Dellinger. We'll be back with more from the LeBaire Studios right after this.
When my wife and I started Relief Windows, what we were trying to do, what our goal was to give a quality job to a homeowner. Everybody's scared of contractors. We wanted to change the mold of what that is. Not showing up on time, not answering the phone, somebody running with your money. The reason why you should pick Relief Windows to do your renovation of your home, windows, doors, hardy plank or siding, is because of the experience, quality service of our company. Service is everything we have. It's the foundation of our company. We're going to show up on time. We're going to do the job right. Over 60% of our customers is customer referral. We're a local company here in Baton Rouge, built in Baton Rouge, staying in Baton Rouge. Okay. The job's not done until you're happy and we're happy. It's built the old-fashioned way, with a handshake. Here at Relief Windows, it's an honor to be official window, door, and siding company of LSU Athletics, from one winning team to another.
Appliance Distributors of Louisiana are appliance experts who have been in business for over 35 years. ADL provides worry-free, full-service solutions for the whole home. ADL works with designers, builders, or individual homeowners like me when I was remodeling my home after the Great Flood in August 2016. ADL offers special homeowner discounts, just like the ones the builders get. Go to ADLappliances.com and see all the major name brands, or stop by their store on Nicholson Drive in Baton Rouge. ADL services the entire state of Louisiana, so call, log on, or stop by today. Appliance Distributors of Louisiana. If you're an avid sports fan, then you need to check out the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, located in historic downtown Natchitoches, next to the Chateau St. Denis Hotel and the Natchitoches Convention Center. The Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is where the rich history of Louisiana sports is told through the pictures, artifacts, and by the legends themselves in video archives. Come to the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame and Northwest Louisiana History Museum and visit a world-renowned architectural marvel. For more information and to purchase tickets to the annual Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame events, visit lasportshall.com/purchase.
Welcome back, everybody. Ronnie Rance here with Ross Dellinger. He does a great job with the Advocate newspaper covering LSU. And, of course, right now the LSU Tiger football team breaks back into the top 25 in the polls. And have you seen the line with, is it, how many points?
24.
24. Mm-hmm. So LSU opens up at a 24-point underdog against the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. Interesting, 24. It's a lot more than I thought it would be. I thought it would be like 17, but 24 is a bunch. I mean, and look, Alabama is only 4-4 against the spread this year, but they have just been hanging some big numbers on folks. I think most people don't think LSU's offense is probably going to put a lot of points on Alabama's defense. I'm one of those. I just don't see enough change. Granted, they have the movement. Granted, we see them with the jet sweep as a new wrinkle and the pre-snap movement's a new wrinkle. But the same problems they've always had, the same problems they have now. They don't have a mobile quarterback. They don't really throw the ball all over the field. Heck, they put up almost 600 yards of offense against Ole Miss and didn't throw one ball to a wide receiver, which, by the way, is going to start to hurt them in recruiting. That's coming, I'm telling you. But, you know, that you can't. That's not a formula for moving the football and putting 20-something points up on Alabama.
Right. We talked about it earlier. You know, the way to beat Alabama is have that mobile quarterback and spread the field out and you know, move around and move the pocket. And LSU is just not great at that. They're still best when you know, when they have that pro style set and everybody's kind of bunched up. You just don't see them. And even Ed Orgeron's come out and said it. And I think it's more of a recruiting pitch than anything. Is we don't have enough receivers to spread the field. You know, 4 or 5 receivers. So that's what you got to do. I got to think the coaching staff now, they got 2 weeks to prepare. That you're going to see Matt Canada come up with some stuff that maybe we haven't seen this year. But still, you've still got a quarterback that's you know, had back surgery in April and can't move around real well, and you've got a team that their strength is to hand the ball off and not to throw it. And you know, against Alabama, they're just going to gang up on you and put pressure on you. And what LSU I think has to do is what they did the last 3 games, and you got to give Danny Etling really quick, easy passes, but you got to catch the ball too. You know, you got to have. If they had, they maybe targeted 4 receivers against Ole Miss, and they had 2 of the 4 drop passes. One of them was for a touchdown. So those are plays you have to make against Alabama. You can not make those plays against Ole Miss and still win. Those plays got to be made against Alabama.
Nick Saban, in your opinion, is he, you know, at what point is he considered the greatest college football coach of all time? Do you still have Joe Paterno in there, or Eddie Robinson, or Tommy Bowden, or Bear Bryant? Or at what point does he take that mantle, in your opinion?
Well, you always hear it, but you know, it's kind of a cliche now, but it's harder to win now than it was then. You know, and I think that's true. I think the talent feel like because of the NCAA rules, right, is spread out as much as it ever has been. How they keep doing it over there is amazing. I mean, how every year they keep doing it is just shocking, and it's really hard to explain how he keeps churning out the talent, keeps developing the talent. I mean, they're going 10, 12 deep on the defensive line like a NFL team. I mean, LSU goes 5 deep, you know, maybe on their defensive line.
What's incredible is that LSU over the last couple of years has more players in the NFL than Alabama has, and obviously doesn't have quite near the production. But LSU's getting great players. It seems as if Alabama gets them to buy in more at the team concept, at least at the college level, and that's from an outsider's perspective. But when in the recruiting, you know, their players aren't as scared to compete, right? You know, they'll get a bunch of 5-star athletes or 4-star at different positions. You don't hear as much players go, well, I'm not going to go there because I got other good linebackers too. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's a credit to Nick Saban that he's able to challenge people and know what buttons to push. But at the same time, LSU is in that, you know, rich farmland of Louisiana high school football, and no matter who the head coach is at LSU, you're always going to have that rich soil to be able to get those players. So LSU's doing a lot of good things, but at the same time, the production on the field just isn't quite the same as it is at Alabama, and that's the part that obviously LSU fans get frustrated with.
Yeah, it's tough to explain the whole NFL thing, you know, how there's so many more people. And the only way I can kind of explain it, in a couple of recruiting guys that have covered recruiting in the state have kind of explained it to me in a way, is that, you know, a lot of it is the cornerbacks, LSU, where LSU thrives. A lot of it is at receiver. It's not as much on the lines, especially on the offensive line, and that is where. And when Ed Orgeron took over the job, he said, you know, Alabama's a team we have to beat, and to do it, we got to get better linemen. We got to get better line play on both sides, but specifically offensive linemen. We got to get better. You know, our quarterbacks don't have enough time to throw. We can't get the push down the field. So you've got to start recruiting better when it comes to both lines, but specifically the offensive line. I'm going to write a little bit about that heading into game day. You know, this game is being dictated for years in the trenches. You know, who's got the better lines wins the game. In last 6 years, Alabama's had it.
It's unbelievable to think that it's already coming up this November. It'll be 6 years since the game of the century. It doesn't seem like it's been 6 years. It's gone by like that. I can remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember I got the chance, stood on the sidelines watching the game, got to stand next to Kevin Mawai and watch the game. And he had living in Nashville at the time, and he had flown in with a buddy. And it was, I got a Harvard education in football, standing next to him, watching him break down the game. And that was a game that LSU truly got outplayed. Alabama had over 100 yards more offense, and I remember people wonder, why did they take Jared Lee out of the game? Jared Lee's eyes were about this big. I can remember him just being totally gun shy, because when Alabama got pressure on him early, which they did, he had no time to throw the football. He was just 3 steps getting rid of it, just trying to save his life, and he was getting rid of it too fast. He was just in shell shock. It was the absolute 100% right call to get him out of the game. And that was when they put Jordan Jefferson back in. Remember, that was the first time he played that year since the suspension, or played meaningful. And it made the difference, because they were able to just kind of run a little bit of option, just enough, to move him around, enough to move the ball. But that was such a hard-hitting game. And thank God for LSU that Alabama didn't have a good field goal kicker. But it's been 6 years since that game.
Yeah, it is amazing to think about.
Do you remember that game, where you were and what was going on?
I don't even remember where I was. At the time, I was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Oh, you was in Mississippi or
Missouri?
Missouri?
I was covering Jackson State at the time. I don't even remember if I watched it. But I went back last year and rewatched the game, and all the things you hear about how hard of hitting, and just like it was just an NFL game, It's just in the trenches. You don't see that as much with Alabama and LSU anymore. We saw a little bit in 2014 here, that overtime game. That was a struggle, but it's nowhere near what it was then.
I'm really surprised Trent Richardson didn't make it in the NFL, because I really thought, this guy was, he was like a nose guard playing running back. So I thought at worst he could be a good fullback, because I remember bench press 500 or whatever he did. He was a monster. But you had him at running back and the big collisions with LSU's defense. Of course, you had the Honey Badger back there running around back then. That was fun. But the game, in my mind, changed on the Brad Wing punt. He had this big, huge punt when LSU was backed up. It clipped the wire on the camera that went over the field. It took a kind of a funky hop, and it got a roll. It was like a 70-yard punt or something. Kind of flipped field position, gave LSU a chance. But what a great game. Ross, tell the folks where they can check you out online.
You can go to theadvocate.com, and we'll have stuff there. And you can go to, of course, Twitter. Ross Dellinger, at Ross Dellinger is my Twitter name. So.
How many tweets a day are we averaging? Seriously, what do you think?
It's the bye week, so
okay, so right now we're slow, but normal game week. Next week, Alabama, how many tweets you think a day?
I don't know, 50-ish maybe.
50?
I guess.
I haven't done 50 in 4 years. Ross, thanks so much, man.
Sure, Ronnie.
Appreciate it. Ross Dellinger does a fantastic job. Check him out. We'll give you all the latest on LSU. We'll be back next week with more. Have a great one, everybody.
If you're an avid sports fan, then you need to check out the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, located in historic downtown Natchitoches, next to the Chateau St. Denis Hotel and the Natchitoches Convention Center. The Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is where the rich history of Louisiana sports is told through the pictures, artifacts, and by the legends themselves in video archives. Come to the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame and Northwest Louisiana History Museum and visit a world-renowned architectural marvel. For more information and to purchase tickets to the annual Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame events, visit lasportshall.com/purchase.